Welcome back to the Polish Podcast, where we embolden women in their faith and work. I'm your host, Jane Doerman. Your work matters, and at Polish Network, we provide the connection you crave, professional development you deserve, and the gospel you need. Join us each episode as we deep dive the themes we're exploring in the Polish community, featuring a variety of guests sharing their perspectives and experiences as Christian working women. Whatever brought you here today, we are thrilled that you've joined us, and we hope these stories spark a renewed sense of purpose and embolden you to flourish on your leadership journey. Today, we're wrapping up our exploration of what it looks like to lead with love. And to cap off this insightful journey, we're joined by a dear friend of mine, Karla Blair. Something you need to know about Karla is the remarkable way she embodies love. Steady, calm, and deeply committed to serving others, she radiates the essence of a servant leader at heart. Karla Blair is an accountant at GE Aerospace with over a decade of dedicated service. But Karla's impact extends far beyond her professional endeavors. With a background rooted in accounting and experience in diverse industries, she brings a unique perspective to our conversation. What sets Karla apart is her unwavering commitment to seeing others. It's not just about crunching numbers for her. It's about understanding the human stories behind them. Karla's leadership style is infused with empathy, a trait she honed through life's myriad experiences, especially during her formative years.
Well, I think it started early on in my life because I grew up in a fairly low-income household, primarily raised by a single mom. And, we had very meager means. I definitely remember my junior high years where, you're so aware of yourself and the people around you. And I remember being so embarrassed to go to lunch because I had one of those little orange tickets that said, that's what I would say the poor kids used to get free lunch.
Sure.
And so I would try to eat last so that no one could see me sharing, or having to hand over that little orange ticket and feeling very, ashamed of that. I knew that my household was not like those of my friends, who had a mom and a dad. They took vacations, a lot of things that we were not privileged to have.
Okay.
I remember, as a child walking to the grocery store, and my brother and I would have to do the grocery shopping. So we had one of those, what I call little old lady carts, and we would walk and, we were, receiving government assistance. So I would make sure that we went really, really early on a Saturday morning so that would reduce the chances of me running into any, friends or anything like that. So I started out that way with that, mindset. And I must say that over the years, I believe that that's probably what gave me that foundation of empathy for others.
From her tenure at Microsoft to her current role at GE, Karla has always prioritized empathy and care for those around her. But her contributions extend beyond the corporate realm. She also serves on the board of several organizations, including a pregnancy crisis center and Restoration Ranch, a foster care agency and residential treatment facility for at-risk youth, which further demonstrates her dedication to making a positive impact in her community. Empathy is the fuel that keeps her moving forward.
And when I think about empathy, what I'm referring to is someone who is in need of something. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be emotional support, but there's some void in their life in some way. And there's something in me, in my heart, that says, I want to help fill that void, because I remember what it felt like to be without. And I want people to feel whole. I want people to feel like they are fulfilling their purpose. I know that I had many people that helped me along the way throughout my college years, because I didn't grow up with family members who had went to college and who had that experience, who could tell me. I was the first of my mother's 8 children to go to college. Even though she went to college though as an adult. So I remember that. but I didn't have, that generational experience where someone could say, hey, this is what happens when you go away to school and you're living on campus. Like no one in my family had ever done that before.
Wow.
So I was a first. And so, I think those experiences is really what helped shaped me in terms of feeling others' pain, feeling, others when there's a void in their life or even, in their career. I've always felt like, my goal is to help others, to show the love of God, to be more specific. So that's how I feel like I show up to work every day with that in mind, is what can I do to show God's love and to help everyone fulfill their purpose, the people that, God brings into my life. And every day is a new opportunity, whether it's in your home or at your job, at the grocery store, just small things. I know I raise my kids to do small things, acts of kindness, simple things like, hey, when we're at the movies, no, you're not going to leave your popcorn there for someone else to pick up. Yes, we are going to walk the shopping cart back to its designated place. These are small things, but what I try to do is make them aware, of other people, make them aware that, other people are not here to serve us, but we're here to serve. We're here to help. I wanted them to be aware, to look around and see, is there someone that is in need? Is there someone that I can help in some way? And so I've tried to model that, throughout my life. And, and I definitely have tried to make sure that my kids, that was instilled in my children as well.
Now, as we take a brief pause, let's reflect on Karla's profound insights. From her definition of empathy to her overarching goal of showing God's love, it's evident that Karla embodies a servant heart, instilling this value not only in her professional endeavors, but also within her own family. So stay tuned as we return shortly to delve deeper into Karla's journey and glean further wisdom on leading with love. Hey, Polish Network, I am really excited to tell you about a brand new podcast, Holy Curiosity with Kat Armstrong. Kat's the co-founder of Polish Network and a fierce advocate for working women. Kat's mission in life is to spark holy curiosity in Bible readers. That's why the Holy Curiosity podcast follows a person, a place, or a thing in the Bible so that we can all appreciate the genius storytelling of God. Kat, along with Bible scholars and special guests like Drs. Tim Mackey, Lynn Kohik, Michelle Knight, Nijay Gupta, and Diane Langberg, will guide us through storied connections threaded throughout Scripture. And Kat's not afraid to talk about hard topics. For instance, Kat's first miniseries is about the abuse Dinah experiences in Genesis 34. Go subscribe to Kat's new show, Holy Curiosity. You can find more information about Holy Curiosity on Kat's website, katarmstrong.com/podcast. Or you can click the link in our show notes. Check it out today. As Karla shared earlier, her goal is to show up and to show God's love, whether that's in the office, at home, or wherever the day takes her. She is the walking definition of what it means to embody a servant heart, and I found it interesting how her life experience from childhood informed the posture of awareness she has now. She has a keen sense of seeing the needs of others around her, so how exactly does that translate into the workplace when she leads her team, especially when her teammates are so diverse?
Not everyone around us is going to share that same viewpoint about God, but they don't have to for you to still lead with love. And so for me, what that looks like on a daily basis is being able to be someone that people can come to, that they can talk to, that they're not afraid to share problems that they're going through. And when you see issues with your coworkers, maybe the work that's being performed isn't quite up to par. I try to, without, invading their privacy,
Sure.
I do try to make room for them to talk about what might be going on behind the scenes. Is there an issue at home that is perhaps taking your attention away and you're not able to focus? I certainly, have experienced that with a son that we had that was going through issues with drug addiction. And trust me, that was extremely distracting. And I felt very isolated because, who at my job and the career that I have, certainly no one else is going through that. That's what I thought. And so I was very quiet about it, but I know that my work performance was suffering because I couldn't focus the way that I wanted to. But I also didn't feel like I had someone that I could just go to and share and say, hey, this is what's going on in my home life. And then maybe even get advice like, hey, maybe you could take a leave of absence. Maybe there are some alternative things that we can do. Maybe we can revise your work schedule, or maybe there are some projects that you don't need to focus on right now. So that gives you more time to focus on at home. So that experience alone has really helped me to lead in a position where I can be a source of support, maybe ask different questions, and not just assume that, okay, if something is at work isn't quite the way it should be, I'm not going to assume that it's just because they're just not working hard enough, right? That's not my go-to. Yeah. And I think that's a really important point for leaders is, we all have metrics and goals and things that we have to accomplish. And so if you're seeing that these things are not being done the way or in the time in which they should be, I would encourage people to ask probing questions without being too intrusive, but letting them know that, hey, this is a safe place. If you're going through something, let's figure out how we can help you, help us, help the company, and look for solutions to help them personally, not just what can I do to make sure that you're a better employee. It was really all about caring for the person, because I always feel like if I care for the person, then the performance, I can build up your skills. We can send you to classes. There's training. There's all things like that. But if I'm building you up as a person, that's where you're going to shine. And when you're shining, and you're feeling good about yourself and the work you're doing, it's going to come through in your work product. And so that's so important to me, it's to lead with a sense of empathy, with a sense of actually caring for the person, not just the work that the person is doing.
I think that's a reminder for all of us that all of us have been given a lot in life, whatever that lot looks like, and we need to learn to steward that well. And it's not just limited to the workplace. So we all are coming in to our workplaces with various levels of baggage, or, I even think about, I have some teacher friends who have been trained to also communicate with their students, because they realize that their students are all coming in with different varying levels of baggage, and how can we, see them as a person, help them get through whatever struggle they dealt with that morning, whatever that looked like. And how can we get to a space, a safe space here in our work, because I tell my kids all the time, your school is your work right now, but just this idea of like you said, how can we make work a safe space where you can come in, maybe not be too intrusive, but recognize we're all dealing with different things outside of these walls, and how can we empathize with one another and get to a place where okay, let's get settled. Let's, go to work, but also recognize, how can we help you, be the best that you can be in the lot that you've been given today. So I think that is such an important reminder, because I do think, and I'm guilty of this too, that work can easily become all encompassing of our lives. And that's not true. We are created to live full lives, and that includes what happens outside the walls of our workplace. And that's just as important and needs just as much attention. So I think that's such a good reminder for us all, Karla. Thank you for sharing that. But something that I'm curious about, because we all deal with workplace conflicts, okay? So when there are conflicts or challenges within your team, how do you handle them while ensuring everyone feels heard and respected? Do you have any insight into that and how to handle workplace conflicts that can come up?
Yes. Yeah. So
yes.
the very idea of workplace conflict, it makes it sound like it's only something that happens at work. And
Sure.
And really, this is true no matter where the conflict is happening. But at work, I feel like there are rules. There are some rules that, the way that we're supposed to behave and the way that we're supposed to talk to one another. We're all supposed to be professionals. And when you find that you're in a situation where those rules are sort of thrown out the window and people are not talking to one another kindly, perhaps even using harsh language, pounding on desks, slamming doors, like all of these things are real, even in the workplace.
Sure.
And that's, it's difficult, but the first thing that I would say is pause. Just take a pause and breathe and try to acknowledge that this doesn't have to be personal. And that's, I feel like, what really causes things to go awry is that we start to take it personally. And some people might say, oh, it's just work. Well, when you're maybe talking to someone in a degrading manner, you can't help but take it personally.
Sure.
But again, sometimes you do have to just remember that, okay, let's just wait a minute. Let's figure out what is the real issue. Is it a personality conflict? Is it the work itself that we just not agreeing on the method? And really, it's like you said, taking a moment to actually hear the person. Yeah. And I always what I've learned is that you have to listen not with the intent of getting what I want to say after they're done. Like the moment they're done, I'm going to blurt out what I want to say. Sure, it's actually, can I listen? Can I actually hear what they're trying to tell me? Even if it's coming through maybe a voice that's raised and it's louder than it should be, am I able to take a moment and try to hear what they're really trying to say? Because maybe this is not who they normally are, especially if this is something that is outside of their normal character. Then I really have to take ownership of the situation and say, okay, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to pause for myself because I know for me, you start feeling, your blood pressure's, getting raised. You feel like you're getting hot and you feel it, like something's about to boil over and you really don't want it to get to that point. And so when those conflicts arise, you really do have to take a moment and say, okay, if this were flip-flopped, if I was on the other end of this, how would I want the person to respond to me? And so many times we want to assume that our intentions are good, but the other person's intentions are not. And that's, so we don't always give the same thing that we want to receive. So I would try to just pause and say, okay, if this were me and I was this upset, would I want someone to respond in kind, or would I want someone to take a moment and say, Karla, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I don't know if I have the answer, but why don't we take a moment to unwrap this and figure out what's really going on? Is there something that I need to apologize for? Because that's very possible. Maybe there was something said or done unintentionally that caused a hurt or a pain. And we have to be willing to acknowledge that. And so it's not easy, but it's something that I think with practice can be done. And I think we have more than enough opportunities to practice these skills. And the Bible talks about taking every thought captive. And this is a perfect example of that, because your first thought is not necessarily the right thought. right?
Sure.
So someone's coming at you, or there's a conflict, especially if it's not verbal and if it's just over email. I think those are the worst, honestly, when it's
They
an
are the
email
worst.
conflict, because you can't hear the person's intent in their voice. You're reading something with an intention behind it, but it may not be correct. And so if it's an email conflict, my first thing is, I got to pick up the phone and I'm going to say, let's talk. You know, and if it's something on the phone, then maybe can we meet in person? Can we do a video call? Because I think there's a different sentiment when you're actually seeing someone's face and you're seeing their expressions and their emotions. I think you will have a better conversation. And I think we owe it to one another. We owe it to ourselves, to our colleagues, to, you know, to create the environment that we want to have, because the culture isn't going to create itself. And most times when there's a toxic, you know, environment and a culture where there's just a lot of conflict, it's because people are not talking. They're not communicating. There's a lot of one-way conversations, and you're not actually sharing anything. You're just, you know, you're hearing one side and then you're going off and making assumptions about that, but no one's actually talking. And I think, you know, when I think back to what I said earlier, it's about caring for the person. You know, if I care about you as a person, then I should be willing to listen. And I would hope that, you know, they feel the same way. Do you care enough about me to give me feedback? Because I think that's another missed opportunity for communication, is not sharing feedback or only sharing negative feedback. That's not going to make anyone feel good if it's not balanced. So how do we balance our communication and make sure that we're communicating with the whole person, because they're a whole being, and we want to make sure that we are caring for the whole being and not just what they said at that particular moment in time, and responding, especially in a negative way, and just taking a moment to pause and reflect and say, okay, what's really going on behind this? How do we get to the root cause so that we can help each other grow and make sure that we have a healthy working environment?
I love that. The phrase you said is the culture is not going to create itself. That is something for us to take home with us today, because I've heard another way of saying, you know, stop complaining about culture and start creating it, because, and that's all about that communication piece. And it's all about, you know, like you said, caring for the whole being.
Right.
Like, we're whole human beings, you know, coming in with emotions and different perspectives, different life experiences. And like you said, I love that, you know, there's power in the pause. And, you know, especially things like email conflict or, you know, you're not communicating face to face. It's pick up that phone and talk to them. You know, stop creating this narrative, you know, that's just going to fuel the fire of this inner conflict that you're having with yourself. And the person's probably like, whoa, where's that coming from? Right. You know? So I love that, Karla. That's such I don't know, it's an encouragement to me to hear that, you know, just this whole idea of like, we are all taking part in creating this culture that we're working in, and how can we influence it for the better? So that's something for all of us. I think it's challenging because sometimes those are uncomfortable conversations, but sometimes I think the hardest part is the person to go first and say, let's talk about this, you know, because then it opens the door for the conversation and the communication to happen. So how does your commitment to leading with love and understanding influence the decisions that you make when you face tough situations as a leader?
Well, it really is, it's everything, because I know that at the end of the day, my relationship with Christ is the most important thing in my life. I know that I'm responsible to God for the decisions that I make, not just at work, I mean, not just at home, but also at work. So if I'm not leading with love and empathy, if I'm not showing that that Christ is the center of my life, then ultimately I know that I'm responsible to God for how I treat people. So I always have to keep that at the forefront of my mind, because that's the truth. And there's no separation. You know, when I face God, I'm not going to have an exception clause. Well, okay, you were great at church and you were great at home, but you treated the people you worked with, very poorly. You made decisions that were selfish and in your own best interest. Like I'm not going to get a pass for those types of things. So I always have to keep that in mind, because I'm responsible for every word that comes out of my mouth. I'm responsible for how I treat others, the decisions I make about them. And so that drives me. That is enough fuel for me, every day of the week, that I have to remember that's the forefront. And like I said, I want them to feel like they can be their whole self, that they can come to work and be their whole selves. I don't want anyone coming to work feeling like they have to, hide who they are, especially, as a believer. We often think that we have to check our Christianity at the door. Nothing could be further from the truth. That's where it's needed the most. And for me personally, I know that my work is ministry. I was called to ministry, but I didn't know that it was going to be corporate America. I thought it was going to be in a church. And then God, quickly revealed to me that, hey, this is where I've called you to be. Because if you're not there, there are going to be people who are never going to know me, because they didn't know you. They didn't meet you. And so, that is something that is something that I have to always keep at the forefront. And it drives every decision that I make, because if I'm not doing things that are pleasing to God, then I'm certainly not going to do things that are going to help my company in the long run, because I'm not leading with integrity, and I'm not leading with accountability. I'm not leading with transparency. And those are all things that God requires of us. And so that keeps me, those are my boundaries. That's the lane that I stay in. Yeah. And I hope that is, what others, see when they see me.
Well, and I think that's, something you said that I think resonates with all of us, is bringing your whole authentic self to every place, but especially the workplace, and not checking your faith at the door. Like, faith is this integral part of who you are as a person. If you are a person of faith, it should inform every single aspect of your life, especially the workplace, because we have such an opportunity to be his light, his salt and light in the world. And it's not limited to Sunday morning service or, and I think that's something when I have conversations with women who will kind of, I don't know what the word is, like negate, or just kind of like, well, I just do that, but that's not really the real mission. It is. Yes. You are on mission, in your workplace as an accountant. I have a friend who works for Procter & Gamble, and she's a scientist by trade. And she, really wrestles with that. Like, how can I be a Christian in the work that I do every single day? I'm like, you do, because you show up. You show up and you are God's light in your office, and you might be the only interaction with God that they may have that day, because they may not at that point in their life be comfortable setting foot in a church or being in a church community, right? So there is such rich opportunity for us as Christians to show up with our faith, and making our faith so integrated into our lives that it's just natural, and it comes out in the ways that we act and work alongside other people.
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to make mention of, we were talking about resources and things that have helped me, in my leadership journey. And I know this book title may not sound like a leadership book, but honestly, it absolutely changed my perspective. And it it is called The Bait of Satan by John Bevere. That book changed my life, because it's all about offense. And I didn't realize what a powerful enemy offense can be, and how it permeates in every corner of our life, especially at work. There's so many opportunities to get offended. And when it's what we do with that offense that really shapes who we are. And so when I started understanding that, that really helped me to become a better leader, because I knew how to deal with offense. And as a leader, if you don't deal with offense well, you're not going to be a very good leader. You may be a leader, but you're not going to be a good leader. You're not going to be a great leader. And so learning how to, the offense is going to come. The Bible says that, woe to whom offenses come. They're going to come. But in order for, it to have an impact, you have to receive it. And I had to learn how not to receive the offense. It does come, but it's up to me whether I take a hold of that and incorporate that into my life, or whether I look at it through the lens of Christ and say, okay, it's here. Now, what does the Bible say? How am I going to treat this person now? The offense is here. The words came out. The action came out, whatever happened. But now here's my opportunity to show Christ. And what does that look like? Does it, am I going to take the scripture and apply it to the situation, apply it to my hurt, to my pain, or I'm going to take the offense and incorporate that into my life? Because if I receive that and I reap that and I put that seed of offense in me, guess what's going to grow from that? More offense. Yes. And so, I cannot highly enough recommend that book to people, if you haven't read it, The Bait of Satan by Jane Doerman.
All right. We will be sure to link that book in the show notes for this episode. So if you want to learn how to be unoffendable and how offense affects us, I know I'm adding that one to my to-be read list. I love the Bevere's, Lisa and John, in the work that they do. So The Bait of Satan by John Bevere. We'll definitely link that in the notes. It's a great resource for us. Thank you, Karla.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, get ready to be pleasantly surprised as Karla peels back the layers and shares even more with us during our Ask Me Anything segment. So don't go anywhere. There's plenty more to discover. Come experience the power of collaborative leadership at Polished Chapter Gatherings, where driven professionals come together monthly in diverse locations nationwide. This month, we're shifting gears to explore the theme of leading with collaboration. Exceptional leaders understand the importance of fostering strong relationships and working together towards common goals. Join us as we delve into what it means to authentically collaborate and support one another. Don't miss this opportunity. Connect with us this month and discover a Polished chapter near you at polishednetwork.org. Because at Polished, we're not just building connections. We're cultivating a community that leads with collaboration. Welcome back, friends, to the Polished Podcast. We hope you're enjoying the conversation we're having with our guest today, Karla Blair. But now it's time to add a dash of spontaneity and a sprinkle of fun to the show. It's time for Ask Me Anything! So this is a chance for us to peel back the layers and get to know the woman behind the work, the quirks behind the expertise, with questions curated by me and our audience. So let's follow our curiosity to know more about Karla. It's February, it's Black History Month, and we're curious, could you tell us about someone from the Black community who has deeply influenced or inspired you and shaped your perspective on work?
Well, that would have to be my mother.
Please tell us more.
She was an amazing woman, not without, her own struggles and faults as any parent. But when I look back and I see what she accomplished, I mentioned that, she went back to college as an adult after having 8 children and graduated and became a teacher. And so I have the highest respect for her. She introduced me to Christ at a young age, of course. And so that also led me, on my journey, started me on that journey to really to know the Lord. And so I always, have to think about her and her accomplishments and what she had to overcome and the struggles in her lifetime, even her as a child and what she went through. And think about, wow, what an amazing woman to do what she did, and to know that, all of her children are serving God. Now she's no longer living, but I know that she is a part of the great cloud of witnesses, and seeing, that the seeds that she planted, they grew. And now we're planting them in our children and expecting a growth and a harvest from that as well. So I have such a high respect for moms like my mom, who sowed those seeds of love, of the love of God and the love of Christ, and knowing Jesus as your Lord and Savior at a young age. It's probably the best gift that she ever gave me.
I love that. I just love how, I don't know, I can just tell, like, her legacy is being lived out through you. I know you, but just to hear, like, having 8 kids and that legacy being multiplied in that respect, like,
Right.
wow, that is awesome. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So question 2 is, what's the most unexpected skill you've developed in your career?
Unexpected.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's a skill. As it relates to my career. It's kind of outside of my career, but it has it has opened up doors to connect with people in a way that I never expected.
Okay.
And it's something that most people would never think that me, if you knew my height and weight, you would be very surprised to know that I ride, I can ride up to a 1600 cc motorcycle.
What?
Yes, I do. What? I've been riding motorcycles for about 28 years.
Oh my goodness.
And it's something I enjoy. We recently, a couple of years ago, we bought a 1600 touring bike for my husband and I to ride together on. I do have my own. He has his own. And then we have one that the bigger one that we ride together. And he had to go to Detroit for something. He was dropping off a motorcycle to our son for him to have. Okay. And then I was supposed to drive to Michigan to pick him up, and then we would drive home together. So I did do that, but what he didn't know was that I was going to drive the 1600 GTL bike to Detroit from Cincinnati by myself.
What? Oh my gosh. That's like a 4-hour drive.
It is a skill.
Yes, for sure.
I must say that, just having that skill has opened up doors for me to be able to talk to different types of people who, like in the motorcycle community, you think of motorcycle rider, accountant, right? 2 totally different streams of people, right? And so that has allowed me to talk to lots of different people and connect with them. And, it's been amazing, and I find that when I tell people that, they're like, what? No way. And then, it just opens up conversation and an opportunity to connect with people.
Well, that is awesome. We are all complex human beings. I did not see that one coming, especially knowing you, and just like, wow, that's so cool. That's awesome. I completely unexpected. You blew me away there. One final question I have for you. What's your go-to power snack during a busy work day?
My go-to power snack. Oh my gosh. It is absolutely Granny Smith apples and peanut butter.
Oh, me too. That's the best. Especially, I like that you said Granny Smith, because some people are like, those are too sour, but I think it's like the perfect ratio.
It's the perfect combination. It's the perfect combination. Granny Smith, they're a little bit sour, but the peanut butter is a little bit sweet. And that is definitely my go-to power snack all the time.
That's fantastic. I approve of that snack. Wonderful. Karla, thanks for sharing more with us. And here's the thing, my friends, we want you to be a part of the conversation too. We want your burning questions, your curious musings, and your wild wonderings about our guests. So, if there's something you've just always wanted to ask, now's your chance. Go to our website, polishnetwork.org, and submit your questions there. Recent reports indicate that isolation, loneliness, and lack of leadership growth opportunities weigh heavily on working women today. And these are just some of the many reasons why the Polish Network is on a mission to embolden women in their faith and work. And we invite you to join us as a Polish partner. Visit polishnetwork.org/give and help us ensure a steady foundation for women to find the vital community they crave, the professional development they deserve, and the gospel they need. What advice would you give for someone who's like, you know what, I want to start leading with others. I want to start seeing others more in the work that I do and in my leadership. You know, what advice would you give to someone who maybe, I don't know, needs help going down that direction?
Well, I would highly recommend you start with prayer. I feel like anything that is going to come out of our lives is going to start with prayer. And if that's the person that you want to be, I know that God is listening and he will help you be that person. So if your heart's desire is to be a better leader, then I would pray, God, help me to be a better leader. Help me to see people the way that you see people. Help me to treat people the way that you would treat people. That is the starting place for me. You can read all sorts of books. You can get all the advice in the world. But if the true source of that is not coming from God, I think it just makes it harder to do it if you're not having God's help in that particular area. And, you know, we're supposed to ask God for everything, no matter how big or how small. And so I would start with asking God for help in that particular area. And then secondly, I would ask maybe someone that you trust to help you be accountable in that area. Maybe it's someone who has input into your performance review process, or maybe they give input, in terms of someone who's observed you, throughout the year. But I would ask someone, hey, I want to grow in this area, and I'm looking for someone to help me be accountable. So if you see something and you notice that I'm not, leading with love or empathy, and I'm not doing those things that I said I wanted to do, because sometimes we have blind spots. And so having someone to be there for you to help support you in those goals, I think would be very helpful.
I love that. Yeah, we always talk about, with Polish, that prayer is the first practical step to anything that we do. And so I love that that's where you started with, and then that accountability piece, because that is twofold. We're going to God, we're communing with him, we're sharing with him what's going on and where we're struggling, and then we bring in the community piece where we use community to keep us accountable. So that's I love that. That's so good. Are there any other resources that we could maybe look into, whether it's a book, podcast, sermon, I don't know, any other resources out there that have really helped you and shaped this perspective in your leadership?
Something that has a God-centered perspective. Because the world has a lot of advice, right? There's no shortage of advice on how to do any and everything. But if it's not coming from a God perspective, then I think there's something missing. And, we were all born, as it was said, with a God-shaped hole. So I don't want to fill any void in my life with something that is not tied back to God, because he's my source. And I rely on him for everything. And so I'm not, going to look for any source of information. Like I said, there's a lot out there, and yes, you can read. But at some point, even if it's not a God-centered resource, you've got to take that back before the cross and say, God, okay, I received this knowledge, but how do you want me to apply it? How can I do this where it's still God-honoring at the end of the day? Because that is, we all have to answer to God for everything that we do. Sure. So I would highly recommend that, no matter what the source is that you find, that you take that prayerfully back to God and say, okay, I learned this, but God, what is your perspective on it? How can I apply this? And so that you're honored?
Yes, always taking it back to God, and I love it. I love it. I love it. So, well, thank you so much for coming on here today, Karla, and sharing pieces of your story with us and your heart. I don't know, my big takeaway from all this is God is the center of everything, and He informs the way that we show up in our workplace, and He helps us to see others in our work. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
So today's conversation with Karla reminds me that leading well always keeps God at the center of everything we do. But how about you? What's your takeaway from today's conversation? Here are 5 of mine. There's power in the pause because it allows me to make space and take ownership of my response and consider the other person. Your first thought is not necessarily the right thought. Empathy is caring about the whole person. Great leaders learn how to deal with offense well. Anything good that comes out of our lives starts with prayer. Well, let's compare notes. I want to know what your key takeaways are from our conversation today. You can share those on the Instagram post for this episode and let me know what's resonating with you. As we draw near to the end of this episode, I want to extend our deepest appreciation to those who make the Polish Podcast possible. The Polish Podcast is supported in part by a grant from Coca-Cola Consolidated. Special thanks to Karla Blair for sharing what fuels her passion to show up and see others in every aspect of her life. To our listeners, thank you for your unwavering support. Your engagement and your feedback drive us to create content that resonates with you. A heartfelt thank you to the Polish Network for cultivating a community where working women can thrive and connect. Thanks to White Oak Christian Church for your partnership and generosity in the production process of these episodes. Thanks for showing up today and all month long as we discover new ways to lead with love. And you know, when it comes down to it, remember,
what can I do to show God's love and to help everyone fulfill their purpose?
Be sure to stay connected with us on social media and on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you could, please rate and review the Polish Podcast as well. Until next time, this is Jane Doerman signing off. Keep moving forward and remain emboldened.